Doncic wins the game at the buzzer.
The More Better Podcast.
What up, everyone? Welcome back into the Board Better Show. It's been a minute since we've been able to jump on. Such is the life with children, unfortunately. But it is good to be back. It is good to always talk hoops with everyone here. Appreciate all you guys in the live chat. We'll definitely get to tackling some questions as well if anyone gets through with some there, just given that it'll be a solo show. So we're just going to take a look at some homework review, which will be on the Sacramento Kings, which is everyone's second favorite team, at least this season. And then we're going to dive into today's best bets, the full card, and obviously have a look at our squad ride pick for today as we look to keep around that sort of 60% mark for the squad ride, or push towards 60%, which will be super impressive if we can get there to close out the season. But like I said, we will jump straight into homework review. I want to talk about the Sacramento Kings at the moment. They are absolutely rolling. They're genuinely making a push for that one seed in the West as well, just 4 games back now from the Denver Nuggets. But I think that the time has probably come to pump the brakes a little bit on that team. They're starting to get a little bit inflated in the market, as you can see from today at Utah. We'll get to that game specifically in a little bit. But when it comes to the Kings, I mean, their offense has just been absolutely lights out, red hot. They are the number 1 adjusted offensive rating team in the league by some margin as well, which is super, super impressive. They're 8th in adjusted net rating this season. Also super impressive, all things considered, especially when you look at that defense, because it is what it is at that end of the floor. But they have been, I think, the beneficiary of quite a lot of things falling their way as well, in terms of scheduling opportunities, opponents not necessarily being at full strength, where they're able to catch their opponents. All of that has sort of mattered in a pretty big way for them. And I don't necessarily want to have to dampen the party, because I think that this fan base absolutely deserves all the fun that they're having this season. And I, for one, am enjoying watching that team a lot. But one thing that definitely stood out is when you look at their strength of schedule, 30th, dead last in the NBA. And like I said, I think a lot of that just comes down to the fact that they have had the opportunity to face teams when they are not 100% healthy, when they have been missing key players, when they've had sort of rest advantage working their way in certain spots as well. So all of that kind of coming to fruition, and the fact that their offense is red hot means that, you know, they have been able to take advantage of a lot of those spots. From a regression standpoint, obviously on offense, it has to come eventually. I think we're talking about, for me anyway, sort of projecting them to be about 5 points per 100 possessions worse in the near future than what they have been over sort of the last 15 to 20 games now. So a decent sample size there on the current season anyway. They are shooting the lights out. I think a lot of that regression, not just coming from beyond the arc either, because they haven't necessarily been lights out there, but their efficiency in and around the rim specifically sort of stands out. They're shooting 63% at the rim, which is very, very high, but their projected field goal percentage at the rim sits at 59%. So that 4% drop is pretty big. It's almost 4.5% to be exact. That one very, very noticeable. And like I said, a little bit of 3-point regression as well. They're shooting 37%, expected to be around 36%. So cooling off a little bit from beyond the arc. And when you couple it with the fact that their defense is what it is, like I said, there's not exactly a whole lot of positive regression or negative regression expected for them at that end of the floor in terms of them potentially getting more stops. It means that, you know, it's going to be a tough ask for them to pull wins out when their offense isn't quite executing to the level that it has been for the large part, especially post All-Star break, but for the large part of the season as well. So I think the big thing, like I said, for me is going to be looking at trying to take them in situations where rest advantage is against them, but also teams where they are fully healthy. You know, that strength of schedule should like drop closer towards the middle of the pack. They are comfortably, you know, bottom tier in terms of absolutely being dead last in that regard. I think only the Denver Nuggets are sort of the closest ones to them, who have also been, you know, the beneficiaries of having to play teams not quite at 100%. health and, a lot of schedule advantage spots going their way. So that's something definitely worth keeping an eye on, I think, going forward for the Sacramento Kings to close out the regular season. They're a team that's going to play hard every single night because I think seeding matters to them more than it does for anyone else. And, you just have to listen to some of the post-game press conferences from the players and the coaches alike that sort of highlight the fact that, that every game has meaning for them. So it's going to be a tough fade. It's not one that I'm going to necessarily trumpet as loud as I have previous weeks, where I think the last show that we had, we spoke about fading Denver on the road, which has been very, very beneficial over the last week and a half. If you've been doing that specifically, we've also, caught, I think, a lot of the bottom of these teams in the best possible way with our homework review. So this one, I don't think necessarily going to jump out in terms of being as profitable on a night-to-night basis. But I think if we can pick the right spots in fading the Kings, then we're going to get a pretty decent return on investment there in the short term. But when it comes to the playoffs, that's going to be a fascinating story in itself, because I think we're kind of getting to the point now where the Kings might actually be undervalued in the playoffs, even if they finish as the 2 seed. Everyone's seemingly waiting for the playoffs to come around to fade this team. I think it's going to provide a lot of value on them. Because like I said, that offense, it still is what it is as well at that end of the floor. And when you can score as efficiently and effectively as they can, you negate a lot of the defensive issues that you have, and you start to put a lot of scoreboard pressure on opponents as well to match. So how much of this, I guess, transpires in the playoffs remains to be seen. But I might just be a Mike Brown and Kings believer when that time comes. Obviously, matchup dependent and what happens in terms of seedings there. But take a look at them down the track in the short term. I guess the point is you probably want to be looking to fade them, just looking at the expected efficiency of that offense and how we're expecting some regression to the mean there at that end of the floor specifically, whereas their defense probably going to continue to leak points the way that they have been. And just trying to pull up some of their defensive metrics. And yeah, like I said, their opponents shooting 37%, projected to shoot 37%. Finishing at the rim, allowing 61%, expected to be 60%. So, not a lot of regression expected to be incoming in those 2 specific key areas there, which makes it difficult to want to back them, I think, in the short term. So starting tonight, hopefully, we'll get to tonight's card specifically in just a second. But yeah, let's see what we can do with this Sacramento Kings team in the short term. Let's pull up their schedule really quickly as well before we move on from this and have a look. I mean, they have a tough time coming up as well at the Jazz today, and then return home for a 4-game homestand. But that includes games against the Celtics, which is actually tomorrow, the Phoenix Suns, the Utah Jazz again, and then the Minnesota Timberwolves, who might be fully healthy by then as well, with Anthony Edwards potentially being back, and also the fact that they probably have Karl Anthony Towns back for that one as well. So a really tough 4-5 game stretch coming up here for the Jazz and for the Kings, sorry. And I think there is going to be pretty ample opportunity to be fading them here in the short term. So let's see what the market does with them specifically. And if we can get ahead of things there, I think there's going to be some really favorable matchups to take full advantage of. But let's get into today's best bets then. Let's jump straight into the card and have a look at what we've got locked in. We'll start obviously with the bets that we've made, starting with that Chicago-Philadelphia game. We grabbed a decent position there on the 76ers -7 at the opener. That's sitting at -8.5 at the moment. So done a pretty good job there in the market. I don't think anything really needs to be said about that one. This is one of those games where for the Bulls, 3rd game, 4 nights, they've had a day off in between, obviously, but you had that double OT game. You had that tough matchup with the Miami Heat. Traditionally, this is always where we've seen where things sort of come undone for a team from a fatigue standpoint. It's never really the game straight after a double OT, as we saw. Obviously, they went and won outright against Miami, but this is where the fatigue catches up a little bit. All those extra minutes logged really start to matter in a pretty meaningful way. So The Sixers here probably, like I said, should be able to roll at home. I think we've seen how much better Philadelphia's offense is, specifically their role players offensively at home this season. They shoot almost 40% from deep, those role players at home, versus like 34% on the road. So if their offense is able to roll in a meaningful way, I think they're again just going to absolutely crush a Chicago team that still struggles drastically on the offensive end of the floor. Their adjusted offensive rating is bottom tier, bottom third in the league. They've been terrific defensively, but I don't think that's going to be what gets them over the line or keeps them competitive today. Like I said, when you look at the fact that they are going to be playing, I think, a little bit fatigued and struggling to match up specifically, obviously with Joel Embiid inside and the way that he's playing at the moment, not just as a scorer, but as a playmaker, and the pressure he's putting on defenses in those half-court sets. So in what projects to be a slower game with less possessions, it's going to suit Philadelphia drastically. Obviously, I wouldn't recommend grabbing an 8.5 now when we are on a -7, but at the same time, my number came out at between -9, -9.5 in this one. So, you could make a slight argument that there's some slight value still to be had there. Probably wouldn't mind a Philadelphia team total over either. I think that they're going to score pretty convincingly in this one and comfortably throughout. So that's probably something else worth a look there, in my opinion. We are also on, this one is about as ugly as it gets. The Houston Rockets they're catching 11 now, +10 at home to the Golden State Warriors. That moved on the back of the news that Sengun and Green have been listed as questionable, which is really not great. I would have expected both of them to play in this game, just the way that Houston's going at the moment. I wouldn't say they're playing great basketball, but they're at least playing to some sort of identity, which they hadn't done for basically the entirety of the season up until this point. And the offense is clicking. And as long as the offense is clicking, the Warriors' defensive issues on the road are pretty well known. We don't need to highlight those. This is still a Golden State team that doesn't seem to be in sync on their travels. As good as they might be offensively and as easily as they might score, I don't think that there's a world where this team should be laying double digits against anyone in a situation where they have to travel. So for me, it's just an auto bet at this point. I wouldn't mind a Houston first half line as well. I might still bet that. I'm just going to sit and wait to see exactly what happens with the injury news for the Houston Rockets, to see who's in and out and what the best market entry point is there. But if Jalen Green specifically is good to go, I'd probably be inclined to play a Houston team total over as well. Like I said, they're executing pretty well on the offensive end of the floor, and against this Warriors defense that doesn't seem to show up ever. That sort of speaks for itself. So I don't love this position right now, but it's just something that we have to play, I think, for the rest of the season until we can get proven otherwise. My number came out closer to 7.5, 8, even with the rest disadvantage here. If I adjust for those two guys being out, I probably get close to market at the moment, but I wouldn't necessarily say we have too much of a negative EV position here either. The final bet we've made today, Sacramento Kings at the Utah Jazz, starting the fate of the Sacramento Kings. Grab the Jazz +6.5. Lauri Markkanen out, still 6.5. That market makes a little bit more sense to me now. The only reason I didn't go much larger on this yesterday at the opener was the fact that he was listed questionable, because it's fair to say this number is not even close to being right if he was in. With him out, I'm kind of between 5.5, 6. So I have no intention of buying out a position. If you want to buy out, go ahead and by all means, but this is still a pretty inflated number for what's still a difficult spot for Sacramento. Front end of a back-to-back in altitude, first game back on the West Coast time zone after spending a week on the East Coast. Again, they've shown up basically every single night, so you can't disregard them entirely. But that being said, I still think that you're absolutely paying a premium for a team that has been able to take advantage of some pretty nice things falling their way, which has happened again today because of the fact that Markkanen is out. Jordan Clarkson's out as well. I don't think he's particularly important to the spread or to this team. But again, they catch a team missing their star player, so that strength of schedule isn't exactly going to change today. But I still think it's too many points for a Jazz team that has thrived at home as being an underdog, almost regardless of who's in or who's out. They are 9-1 against the spread this season as a home underdog. I think that this is still a situation where they're feisty enough. Full credit to that team for the way that they do show up every single night, it seems. But some of those matchups as well, I think Walker Kessler can do as good a job as anyone can do in slowing down what Sabonis does in the paint. It matches up very well, I think, for Sacramento's guards. It does put some pressure on Utah to have to perform offensively. But like I said earlier, Sacramento's defense is what it is. So, I mean, you can't exactly trust them to be getting too many stops either. And as a result, I think the Jazz are pretty live to still be, you know, within a possession of this game in that fourth quarter and really make things interesting down the stretch of this one. So I'm still happy with my plus 6.5. Like I said, completely understand if you want to buy out of the 6.5 here with on the back of the market and news, but that hasn't moved for a reason. Any higher, and you'd be inclined to probably add more to your position there, if anything. So those are the three bets that I've made so far for today's card. Just looking at the rest of the games, I don't think there's necessarily anything else that stands out in terms of what I had circled. I'm just going to pull up my spreadsheet as well as the games. But those are the only ones I think that really stood out in any way. The Knicks Timberwolves game is just so hard to properly, I think, price, given the fact that Minnesota is probably going to be without Anthony Edwards, who's still questionable. Rudy Gobert is questionable. I don't know what to make of it. Obviously, if those two go, then 8.5 is way, way too many points, but not anything that I'm necessarily running to bet. I kind of have some value on the Indiana Pacers Charlotte Hornets game going under that total. That's at 234.5 now. I have it 230, so a decent-ish edge there, but again, not one I necessarily want to be acting on. No Halliburton obviously slows down Indiana's offense in a pretty meaningful way. Charlotte's offense has absolutely stunk for the last month now. They've been a dead nut unders team for a little while, so the only way I would play that is unders. I have no real lean towards either side there. Memphis, Dallas, same things. Really hard to properly project. You've got Jaren Jackson questionable for Memphis. You've got Luka Doncic out, but Kyrie Irving questionable. Tim Hardaway Jr. also questionable for Dallas. If Kyrie's good to go, if Tim Hardaway Jr. is good to go, that plus 4.5, plus 5 in some places is way too many points. You have to play Dallas at that point, but the market will move pretty quickly, I think, on the back of those things, especially if Jaren Jackson Jr. is out. If we get Kyrie in and Triple J out, I think it's almost an auto Dallas team total overs play there. We saw how bad Memphis's defense was when he's not on the floor. His metrics are just absolutely off the chart good. The fact that he is no longer front runner for Defensive Player of the Year, I think, is absolutely criminal. But that's just the nature of these awards, where obviously media narratives mean far more than individual metrics, unfortunately. So for me, that's probably a game I'm still going to look at once we get more injury information, which we won't get, I don't think, until very close to tip off. But like I said, I would play anything up to over 115.5, maybe even a little bit higher if Kyrie Irving is good to go and if Jaren Jackson Jr. does sit this one out. But those are the other games today. And like I said, there's not necessarily a ton that stands out to me in terms of value. So I'm happy to roll with what we have. Hopefully we get some positive injury news from the Houston Rockets. And like I said, we might add some position there, maybe a first half plus 6.5 if Jalen Green is good to go, especially if Jalen Green is good to go as well. I'll probably be a little bit more aggressive with my position there. But that is us for today in terms of the bets we've made. Hopefully, like I said, we can keep things rolling. We had a nice day yesterday, trying to garner some momentum, which we haven't been able to do this season, to be honest. But market positions on the whole continue to be really good. We're sitting at like 2% average of closing line value, which is better than what we had for the season last year, even though we made 50 odd units in the regular season. So ebbs and flows, unfortunately. That's the nature of the business, but we keep going as we have done. And, all we can do is basically get ourselves the best possible market entry points and let the cards fall as they do. So let's see how they do today. But Chris, let's get everyone's favorite squad right up. Let's see what we're looking at today and how we can keep this thing going.
You're very confident, I'll say that.
But you shouldn't be.
All right, everyone. Let's see where we're at with the squad rides. I believe the record 10-7 on the season. Pretty good stuff, if I do say so myself. I'll pull up all of the bets put in for today, and we will see what we're going to lock in officially. We have Nick's first quarter, Nick's first half, which is like the mandatory squad ride suggested bet. I get it. Like I said, it's tough when Minnesota have so many questionable tags to really get a proper understanding of what fair price should be. But I couldn't talk you out of a first quarter or first half today. That is absolutely certain. We have Steph over 5.5 assists at Houston. That's a pretty good look. Naturally, Fox over 26.5 points. I like that look a lot from a matchups perspective against the Utah Jazz. Houston Rockets first quarter plus 3.5. Love that look, to be honest. I mean, I like full game. I like first half. I certainly couldn't talk you out of a first quarter look there. The Warriors issues, I think, far greater than what just their road splits suggest, but we'll save that conversation for when we have one of our Warriors guests coming on. We can dive into that in a little bit more detail. Keegan Murray over 2.5 3-pointers made. That's a good look as well. Vucevic over 1.5 3-pointers made against the 76ers. Joel Embiid over 33.5 points. It seems like he just auto bet his overs, I think, at this point. And Zach LaVine over 3.5 assists is everything that we have there. So those last two from our guy Zachariah, we should probably disregard those because he's done nothing to help your squad ride record this season. But the absolute standout for me is De'Aaron Fox over 26.5 points. I think we locked that one in officially. Looking at this Utah team, I mean, they give up points to guards, especially aggressive point scoring guards that can penetrate the paint. Like I said, Walker Kessler, I think, does as good a job as anyone of sort of limiting what Sabonis does in and around the paint. And at the rim, one of the best rim protectors in the league this season, doing a fantastic job for them. As a result, I think Fox just has the most favorable matchup, especially when you factor in Colin Sexton being out and them not really having any guards that do a particularly good job at the point of attack. They don't have anyone that can stay in front of the ball. They don't have anyone that can sort of limit pick and roll action either. So he probably has his way in this one. The volume will be there, and I think the shot quality looks will be there as well. So yeah, let's lock that one in, Chris. Give me the De'Aaron Fox over 26.5 as the official squad ride. I think that's absolutely the best look on the board, especially from a props perspective. But of all the suggestions there, like I said, I like the Houston Rockets first quarter. I couldn't talk you off of a Knicks first quarter, first half either, situationally. Yeah, Fox over 26.5 points, easily the best. That's true. I do take back some of that slander because Zachariah did give us a winner with his last squad ride, which we completely disregarded in its entirety. And it cashed pretty easily in the end. So, but look, today, I think that Joel Embiid look is probably an auto bet, like I said, and I think he has his way. I think the Sixers score pretty effectively, efficiently against this Bulls team in this situation as well. So I would prefer that over Levine's assist numbers. I think if Caruso's out, it's hard to see how Chicago gets up for this game, to be perfectly honest. It might be one that gets out of hand early as well. So a Philly first half line might actually be a really good look there as well if you can get like a -4. But yeah, that's the official squad ride for today. Let's see if we can get to 11-7. Let's see if Fade the Beam starts today with the Utah Jazz and what they can do. But hey, that being said, I mean, Sacramento is going to win that Pacific Division, which is just amazing for them. Absolutely incredible given the talent in that division to start the season, all things considered. So they're going to be a fun team for quite a while yet. And it'll be really interesting to see what they can do in this offseason to strengthen some of those rotations as well and really build out around that sort of Sabonis-Fox partnership as well on offense. And if they can find that right balance at both ends of the floor, because Mike Brown's a terrific defensive coach, like really, really good. What he did with Golden State as an assistant coach with his defensive schemes is so underrated. So I think long-term he's going to help turn things around at that end of the floor. But obviously, as of right now, those issues are a little bit glaring, and I think something that might come back to bite them in the short term anyway. So let's see how that all pans out. But Everyone, appreciate you all for jumping in as well. If you haven't already joined our Discord, please do so. The link is below. Come talk some hoops in the chat with everyone there. We have some good fun. We are enjoying a very fun and profitable March Madness in there. If you're tailing along with the Bet US competition, I think we're 4-1 now so far, March Madness, which is far better than I ever expected to do. So shout out to my guy Dookie as well for helping put us on the right track there. Let's see if we can keep that going. If the link in the description isn't working again for whatever reason, just drop a comment and I can drop a fresh one in there for you as well. But thanks for everyone joining in the live chat again. As always, appreciate all you guys in the Discord. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Drop a like on this video on your way out as well. Helps me out a ton. We'll be back a couple more times this week. The usual Wednesday, Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern slot will continue. We've got a couple of guests lined up so we can go back to these longer form shows, a little Q&A in there as well. And like I said, some really good, I think, basketball discussions on the whole to be had. So plenty to look forward to this week. Best of luck with all your bets today, whatever it is that you make. Let's keep things rolling as we head into the playoffs. And I'll chat to you guys in due time.